A great achievement will shake the master, and the invincible god will be imprisoned in the lower ranks. A humble family background, vows of mountains and seas will eventually become better than beasts. He was originally the #1 general of the Great Shang Dynasty, but at the celebration banquet of pacifying the Seven Kingdoms rebellion, he was falsely accused by the Great Shang Emperor and his beloved ninth princess, digging elixir fields, abolishing meridians, and exiling to the border. He, full of cold despair, was taken care of by his newlywed wife and unexpectedly opened the heavenly prison of beasts, becoming the Lord of Beasts. Retreat martial arts, wild beasts come out of the gate. Keywords of the novel. Crazy Beast God of War no pop-ups, Crazy Beast God of War TXT complete collection download, Crazy Beast God of War latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Animal Blood Boiling. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 1 Animal Blood Boiling, Sikong Jing, as an invincible divine general of the Shang dynasty, you have a different surname as a king. I believe that I have done something inferior to Princess Yen Ryu due to my high achievements. I am now demoted to a commoner, exiled to Yunzhou, and will never be hired. The border of Dashang, the boundary of Yunzhou. In a thatched cottage, a thunderous roar echoed, I'm not willing to accept it. Inside the thatched cottage, a man in his 20s sat up fiercely from the grass bed, his teeth creaking. However, his face was pale and colorless, as if he had a serious illness. He was once the invincible divine general of the Great Shang Dynasty, standing side by side as the king, Sikong Jing. At the age of 12, he joined the army of Dashang. At the age of 15, he defeated 1,000,000 northern bandits with 8,000 remaining soldiers and was appointed as a general. At the age of 17, he went deep into the enemy country and used his own strength to rescue Yan Tianma, the emperor of the Great Shang, who was personally on his expedition. He was awarded the title of the first general of the Great Shang. At the age of 19, he led troops to quell the rebellion of the Seven Kingdoms, killed countless enemies, and was awarded the title of invincible divine general of the Great Shang Dynasty, standing shoulder to shoulder as king. With outstanding military achievements and unmatched abilities, he is the top general of the Great Shang Dynasty for eternity. Time, freeze at this moment. When Sikong Jing entered the imperial city of Dashang with the head of the King of Seven Kingdoms, he was greeted by the butcher's knife of Emperor Yan Tianma. At the celebration banquet, Sikong Jing was poisoned and thrown onto the bed of Princess Yen Ryu. When Yen Ryu woke up, her hair was disheveled, her clothes were disheveled, tears streamed down her face, and she was charming. On the spot, Sikong Jing was imprisoned, and Yan Tianma personally dug up his elixir field, shattered his meridians. The next day, he was shackled and exiled to Yunzhou, from being an invincible divine general to being imprisoned for less than a day. Wow! Inside the thatched cottage, Sikong Jing spat out a mouthful of fresh blood, which fell on the grass and seeped down. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with his hand and said hoarsely, Yan Tianma, you're ruthless enough to ruin me with just one powerful sentence. When in the prison, Yan Tianma smiled and patted his face. You, Sikong Jing, were granted the title of Prince with a different surname, at the age of only 19. Are you going to seize my throne next? So, you can only destroy it. At this moment, Sikong Jing said again, Yen Ryu, you are poisonous enough. It's better to turn the oath of mountains and seas into my beast. Princess Jiao has a jade-like appearance and is as beautiful as her name. She is widely recognized as the #1 beauty in the business world. Prior to this, she had repeatedly expressed her deep commitment to Sikong Jingfang and refused to marry unless she was the one. In the end, what was exchanged was still a sentence from the prison. I am as beautiful as Yunye, the princess of the Great Shang Dynasty. Your humble background as Sikong Jing is also worthy of me. Your dantian, your martial arts talent, I will give it to the man who truly deserves it. As the words fell, Yen Ryu took the elixir field from Emperor Yan Tianma's hand, which had been dug out of Sikong Jing's body. She let out a series of coquettish smiles and turned away, no longer glancing at Jing. Jiya. Just as Jing was reminiscing about this heinous blood feud, the thatched cottage was filled with dilapidated doors that were pushed open by someone. A graceful figure walked into the room carrying a bowl of medicinal soup. She has a delicate figure, but a thick black veil hangs on her face, making it difficult to see her appearance clearly. "Ah! You're awake," the woman instinctively exclaimed when she saw Jing sitting up. The next second, the woman saw the blood on the corner of Jing's mouth again and quickly said, "Did you vomit blood? Are you okay?" In 3 steps, the woman came to Jing and took out a white handkerchief to gently wipe his mouth. Her boneless and delicate jade hands softened Jing's hateful eyes slightly. "Girl, who are you? Where am I?" asked Jing. The woman's hand paused for a moment, and her eyes unconsciously showed a hint of sadness and shyness. She responded softly, "Did you forget? My name is Su Yueshi, and now I am your wife." Jing was taken aback. Wife? What an unfamiliar title. His memory was quickly unlocked. When he was shackled and exiled to Yunzhou, an old eunuch from the Great Shang Dynasty also rushed to inquire about the Lord of Yunzhou in front of Jing. "Which woman is the ugliest in this Yunzhou territory?" Shortly thereafter, a masked woman was brought before the old eunuch, who was Su Yueshi in front of her. On the spot, Su Yueshi was fiercely unveiled by the old eunuch, whose ugly and frightening face made the eunuch extremely satisfied. He immediately announced the marriage between Jing and Su Yueshi and laughed as he left. At the same time, Jing vomited blood and fainted, until now. Su Yueshi saw that Jing was in a daze, and her gloomy expression grew stronger in her eyes. She said, "I'm sorry, if I feel that this title doesn't match you, then I won't mention it again." Jing regained his senses and said with a bitter smile, "There's nothing worthy or not. How long did I sleep?" For him, beauty and ugliness no longer matter. What's the use of having a jade-like appearance but a heart like a snake or scorpion? As long as he genuinely treats himself well, Jing will repay him 100 times and 1,000 times. Su Yueshi replied, "It's been 5 days already." 5 days have passed, and Jing looked at the neat clothes on his body and the clean thatched shop under his body. He understood that he had received careful care from Su Yueshi during these 5 days, and a hint of warmth surged in his heart. "In my mind, memories of these past few days come out vaguely." Su Yueshi changed her clothes, wiped her body, fed water, food, and medicine, and was meticulous across from her. Su Yueshi couldn't bear the gaze of Jing and anxiously placed the medicinal soup on the wooden table, saying, "I have something else to do. I'll go out first. Can you drink the medicinal soup here yourself?" Jing nodded and watched as Su Yueshi hurriedly left. Glancing at the medicinal soup on the wooden table, he smiled bitterly and said, "Jing, am now a useless person. How can ordinary medicinal soup cure me? But I am not willing to accept it." He sat up with all his might, trying to activate the true qi in his body, but his dantian was gone, his meridians were broken, and he had nothing left. Buzz! Suddenly, the mouthful of blood he had just vomited on the thatched bed suddenly lit up with a blood-red glow. In the blink of an eye, the light burst forth and condensed into a translucent blood droplet. Even though Jing is now a useless person, he can still feel the vast and oppressive aura emanating from the blood droplets. Jing's face was full of disbelief, it was not just his own blood. The next moment, a cold and vast voice came to my mind. "Swallow the blood of all beasts, and you will become the master of all beasts." Jing's whole body trembled greatly, and his eyes widened as he said, "Who? Swallow the blood of all beasts, let the blood boil, and regain new life. Dare! Dare!" The voice is still vast, as if it is stirring up Jing, and as if it carries unquestionable authority. Sikong Jing stared intently at the blood pearl and then asked, animal blood boils. Am I still human? Can you dare? Can you dare? The voice didn't answer, just urging. Pop. At a moment of hesitation, a heavy thumping sound suddenly came from outside. Ah! Su Yueshi let out a scream and flew into the thatched cottage. Suddenly, the thatched grass flew and the door exploded. A shrew stepped in and grabbed Su Yueshi's collar, looking grim as she said, "Ugly 8 monsters. There's a pig missing from the pig farm. Did you slaughter the sick seedling husband you used to feed you?" Speaking, the shrew pointed to Sikong Jing on the thatched shop. Su Yueshi shook her head vigorously and said, "I don't have it." Pop. The shrew slapped Su Yueshi's face again and said fiercely, "How dare you say no? Besides you, who else dares to steal pigs from the Su family pig farm?" A trace of blood dripped from under Su Yueshi's thick veil, and she shook her head desperately, "It's really not me." Upon witnessing this scene, Sikong Jing's eyes immediately turned blood red. I wanted to take action, but my body refused to obey me, and my mind still had a vast voice of, "Dare or dare." Suddenly, Sikong Jing looked up to the sky and roared, "Why not dare?" Reaching out to grab the blood droplet, swallowing it in one gulp, the animal blood inside boiled. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Scarlet Spider Venom. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Scarlet Spider Venom. At this moment, Sikong Jing felt like his whole body was about to burn, and every drop of blood was boiling. The pain on my face flashed away in a flash. Immediately enveloped in surprise, the shattered meridians continued to condense and repair in the boiling blood, like densely packed spider webs, constantly building new channels. When the drop of blood from all beasts reached the Dantian, a brand new Dantian began to take shape. His Dantian is like the head of an unknown giant beast, from light to deep, from intangible to tangible, and finally presented in its entirety. At this moment, the shrew did not notice the change in Sikong Jing and scolded Su Yueshi, "Who else is there? The entire Su family knows that you have a sick husband to raise now. If you dare to say no, believe it or not, I will kill you." Throwing Su Yueshi to the ground, the shrew stepped on her face with one foot and rubbed her vigorously. "Ugly 8 monsters, Miss Su from the Su family, The shrew rubbed her big feet and laughed wildly, "If you want me to let bygones be bygones, you can kneel down and beg me. I have never experienced the feeling of being kneeled down and begged for mercy by the daughter of the master's family." Su Yueshi was stepped on the ground, unable to see any expression due to her veil, but her exposed eyes were firm. "It's impossible for her to kneel." The shrew laughed even harder at the sight and said, "You're quite stubborn, but I have a way. I don't know what effect I'll have if I sit all over your sickly husband." Stopping her feet, the fierce woman's large body walked toward Sikong Jing on the thatched bed. Su Yueshi's face changed dramatically as she got up and shouted, "Please don't hurt him. I'll kneel down for you." The shrew was stunned and chuckled, "Ugly 8 monsters are actually in heat. No wonder a man finally wants you, of course, to enjoy the happiness you haven't had in your life. But it's too late." By the time the words were over, the shrew had reached the edge of the thatched shop and was about to crush Sikong Jing. If Sikong Jing was still just weak, this pressure might have cost him half his life. However, at this moment, Sikong Jing's Dantian and meridians in his body have fully recovered, and his injuries have healed. Heating opened his eyes as if flames were rising. A large hand covered in calluses reached out and grabbed the shrew's neck, and then she lifted her feet off the ground. Sikong Jing asked coldly, "How do you want to die?" Su Yueshi, who was anxiously preparing to kneel, stopped and looked at the scene before her with disbelief. At some point, her husband, who didn't even know her name, stood up on the thatched shop. He lifted the shrew high, with a more upright posture than he had imagined, and his face was clear with diamond corners, without any trace of pallor. Only cold and domineering. The shrew reacted with shock and anger. Sick seedling, let go of me, otherwise. Before he could finish speaking, Sikong Jing interrupted heavily, is this the hand that just hit my wife? Grasping the shrew's right hand, Sikong Jing pulled hard. As one of his arms was torn out by him and he screamed, Sikong Jing asked again, did you just step on my wife's foot? Another hand knife, the shrew's legs landing neatly, blood spurting wildly. After finishing, Sikong Jing casually threw her out of the door and kicked out her landing hands and feet. His gaze returned to Su Yueshi, who was already speechless from shock, and he softly asked, are you okay? You. As if waking up from a dream, but Su Yueshi still couldn't say a complete sentence. I'm fine, thank you for taking care of me these days. Sikong Jing was accustomed to the big scene, even though he had only recovered his elixir and meridians now, he wouldn't have any emotions even if he taught a shrew a lesson. There is only a faint tenderness when looking at Su Yueshi. Suddenly, Sikong Jing asked again, even if you were stepped on just now and didn't kneel, why did you kneel for me? After experiencing blood betrayal, it was difficult for Sikong Jing to remain unmoved when he suddenly encountered someone who was so protective of himself. Su Yueshi's black veil moved and she lowered her head, saying, you are my husband, of course I cannot let you be humiliated. One sentence made Sikong Jing's face stiffen, and an indescribable emotion surged in his heart. Yen Ruyu, who once swore a solemn oath, took everything from him, but now Su Yueshi, who met by chance, is willing to suffer humiliation for him. What kind of mockery is this? Sikong Jing sighed and said, oh my goodness, you haven't completely given up on me. After speaking, he walked up to Su Yueshi in one step. Without any hesitation, she lifted the veil from her face and revealed a spider web-like face, covered in black spider moles that made people nauseous. On her face, there was still blood dripping continuously after the shrew stepped on her. Ah! Don't look! Su Yueshi reacted and frantically covered her face, squatting down hard. But Sikong Jing forcefully pulled her hand apart. He wants to see Su Yueshi's face and see if there is any way to treat it. What is the problem? Staring at her, the name of a poison flashed through Sikong Jing's mind and he said coldly, Scarlet Spider Venom. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. 10,000 Beasts Heavenly Prison. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 10,000 Beasts Heavenly Prison. As an invincible general of the former Shang Dynasty, Sikong Jing could freely browse through the imperial treasury books. During the Seven Kingdoms Rebellion, he specialized in researching various poisons to defeat the 10,000 Poison Kingdom. Among them, there are records of crimson spider venom, and the poison person is the current symptom of Su Yueshi. That is to say, Su Yueshi is not naturally ugly, but someone has poisoned her. And Sikong Jing's domineering behavior made Su Yueshi plead with tears streaming down her face, don't look, please don't look anymore. Releasing his hand, Sikong Jing realized that he had been too reckless and apologized, I'm sorry, I'll find a way to fix your face. Before she could finish speaking, Su Yueshi cried and interrupted, I should be the one who said I'm sorry, I scared you. After speaking, Su Yueshi tied her veil again and ran out crying. She thought that Sikong Jing's dazed state when recalling the crimson spider venom was startled by her face. The sadness in my heart can be imagined. Sikong Jing reached out his hand. What he was about to say was that he would find a way to obtain the antidote for the crimson spider venom, but suddenly he realized that in his current state, it would be difficult to go to the 10,000 Poisons country to obtain the antidote. For now, don't give Su Yueshi any hope. Returning to the thatched cottage, Sikong Jing murmured to himself, the blood of all beasts boils. His gaze suddenly froze, and he forcefully opened the thatched cottage. Underneath, on the dirt-covered ground, a monster's head was revealed, constructed with intricate strokes. Each line was blood-red, emitting a faint smell of blood. Sikong Jing squatted down and gently stroked the monster's head, judging, this is my blood. It was the blood I vomited that awakened this mysterious monster's head, condensing thousands of beastly blood beads, allowing me to regain my life. Buzz. Suddenly, the monster head drawn with his blood in front of him opened its eyes and met the eyes of Sikong Jing. This is a pair of cruel pupils. In Sikong Jing's ear, another vast and deep voice came. Lord of beasts, from now on, you will guard the heavenly prison of beasts. The sound fell and drifted away again. The blood thread that formed the monster's head in front of me immediately floated up, as ethereal as smoke in the end. The blood thread condensed into a small monster head badge, and with a chirp, it penetrated into Sikong Jing's eyebrows. Boom! Sikong Jing's mind roared again, and the thatched cottage in front of him disappeared. His consciousness came to a strange place. The world is dark, the earth is dry, and there is no end in sight. Sikong Jing seemed to float between the clouds and rivers, looking down at this lifeless world. But why is this called the 10,000 Beasts' heavenly prison? There is clearly no demon beast. Here we are, the new Lord of Beasts has appeared. A deep voice suddenly rang out, and the dark earth seemed to roll up rough waves, accompanied by excited roars. There's help, we finally have help. It's been 100,000 years. I've been locked up in the cage of the Beast Heaven prison for a whole 100,000 years, and finally I've arrived at the Lord of Beasts. The excited voice shook the earth, piercing through the sky, and Sikong Jing seemed to see the earth boiling. The next second, the excited voice suddenly came to an end. A voice filled with raging anger shook the heavens and earth, saying, "Why is the new Lord of Beasts a human?" In the blink of an eye, the art style of the earth changed dramatically, from excitement to restlessness, and then to anger. This must be a conspiracy of the 5 heavenly emperors. They sent a human to be the master of all beasts, intending to kill us all. I'm not willing to accept it. The 5 heavenly emperors, shameless children. Kill him, kill this human. With the roar of anger, the dark earth was like a landslide and tsunami. A brilliant light rose, and a golden dragon rushed out from the earth, breaking through the sky and rushing toward Sikong Jing in the Yun River, with the momentum to tear him into pieces. The next second, a clattering sound sounded, and the momentum of the golden dragon stopped, being fiercely pulled into mid-air. Even though Sikong Jing had a big heart, he was still shocked by the scene before him. I saw a huge chain tied to the golden dragon, 9 of which were connected to the earth. No matter how hard the dragon struggled, it could not break free, only the sound of clattering echoed through the sky and earth. Human, I swallowed you. The second giant beast broke through the earth and charged up. It was a pitch-black giant tiger, with its big mouth open as if it could swallow the sky and suck the earth. Sikong Jing's whole body trembled again and he shouted softly, "The black prison swallows the heavenly tiger." He had seen his totem in the imperial treasury of the Great Shang Dynasty, but it was also tightly bound by chains and not allowed to enter inch by inch. Roar, roar. Then, towering beasts rose up into the sky, and in a blink of an eye, the sky was filled with countless beasts. Some of them were totems that Sikong Jing had seen before, but 99% were monsters that he had never even heard of. At this moment, Sikong Jing finally understood. Why is this called the 10,000 Beasts' heavenly prison? Because it imprisons all the most terrifying monsters in the world. And as a human, he inexplicably became the master of all beasts. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Slaying the Heavenly Emperor and Breaking the Prison Technique. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Slaying the Heavenly Emperor and Breaking the Prison Technique. Sikong Jing was puzzled and puzzled, but in the end, it turned into an indifferent smile. Remembering the deep blood feud between Yen Tianma and Yen Ruyu, and remembering the protective friendship of Su Yueshi Sikong Jing, I can't manage so much anymore. What about the Lord of Beasts? What about transforming into a monster? At this point, the only thing that can go is nowhere. Looking at the sky full of monsters, he blurted out, "Although I am human, now I am the Lord of all beasts, willing to save you and others." As soon as these words are spoken, heaven and earth remain silent, and all beasts remain silent. After a while, the golden dragon that first appeared exhaled and said, "Little humans are still trying to save us. It's ridiculous and ignorant. Let's see if you can practice the emperor slaying and prison breaking technique created by us first." At the end of the sentence, a golden chapter emerged among the clouds, incredibly complex. Then, one word after another floated up and deeply imprinted in Sikong Jing's mind, unable to be shaken away. Sikong Jing's whole body trembled greatly. When you first read the technique of slaying the emperor and breaking the prison, you can sense that Dantian is in a riot, and a violent true qi is breaking through the shell. He can conclude that this is an extremely powerful technique. The completion of the technique of slaying the emperor and breaking the prison is complete, and we are willing to recognize you as the master. The golden dragon exhaled its dragon breath and its voice was deep. One beast, bound by chains, gazed deeply at Sikong Jing, with some mockery, some resentment, and a hint of anticipation. Sikong Jing took a deep breath and said, "I have a question. Human beings, before we acknowledge you, we will not answer any questions about the 10,000 beasts' heavenly prison." "You leave," the golden dragon shouted decisively, with an extremely bad attitude. However, Sikong Jing still asked, "My question is, what is the solution to the spider venom of the crimson spider?" The crimson spider venom is extracted from the demon beast crimson spider. In front of me, there is a terrifyingly shaped spider in the one beast heaven prison. I don't know its name, so Sikong Jing asked this question. All the giant beasts fell silent again, their eyes strange. Shouldn't ordinary people ask why they are trapped here, and what kind of existence is the beast heaven prison? This human is so lucky that he asked such a question without technical content. It's simply lowering my expectations. At this moment, the terrifying spider spoke in a female voice and replied, "The crimson spider is just an inferior demon beast. As someone who absorbs the blood of all beasts, you only need to reach the 9th level of the Ming realm to use your blood to detoxify." The golden dragon nodded and said, "Any animal poison is useless to the lord of all beasts." Sikong Jing's face lit up with joy, and he clasped his fists and said, "Thank you very much. Goodbye." Watching Sikong Jing disappear, in the 10,000 beasts heaven prison, the beasts looked at the golden dragon and asked, "Why did you give him the slaying emperor and breaking prison technique?" This cultivation technique was jointly created by them over a period of 100,000 years, and was prepared for the true Lord of Beasts. Its full name should be Slaying the Heavenly Emperor, Breaking the Prison Technique. However, this human being is likely a conspiracy of the 5 heavenly emperors, and it is inappropriate to give it to him now. The beasts are puzzled. The golden divine dragon replied with a deep gaze, "If he were an ordinary human, he would undoubtedly die from cultivation. If he achieves great success, he will sprout a beastly heart and will not submit to the 5 heavenly emperors. Naturally, he can become our lord. All beasts are majestic, quietly disappearing into the earth." On this side, Sikong Jing's consciousness returned to the thatched cottage. The emperor slaying and prison breaking technique can be used to use my blood to detoxify the crimson spider venom when reaching the 9th level of the Ming realm. Then cultivate. In the Great Shang Dynasty, the realm of martial artists was divided into 9 levels. Bright realm, dark realm, human realm, earth realm, and heavenly realm. Each realm was divided into 9 levels. The above are the 5 realms of ordinary martial arts, followed by the 5 realms of extraordinary martial arts. Before being deposed by Yan Tianma, Sikong Jing had already reached the pinnacle of the extraordinary 5th realm. Only one step away from the gate was enough to break through the extraordinary realm and enter a higher and stronger realm. Although the Dantian has been reshaped with the help of beast blood, it can only be rebuilt from scratch. But for Sikong Jing, there is no difficulty in the small Ming realm. The only question is whether he can adapt to the slaying emperor and breaking prison technique, but no matter what, Sikong Jing must return to his peak state, kill back to the imperial city of Dashang, and take the heads of Yan Tianma and Yan Ryu. I used to be loyal and devoted to the great business, but now I am willing to transform into a cultivator and eliminate all shame. Sitting cross-legged, Sikong Jing carefully studied the techniques. The deeper he understood, the more Sikong Jing felt like a frog at the bottom of a well in the past. The strongest martial arts he had practiced in the past were like scrap metal in front of this, slaying the emperor and breaking the prison technique. But this is clearly customized for monsters. I wonder what changes will happen to me as a human. After finishing speaking, Sikong Jing let out a smile. Now that his condition is in, there is no need to consider too much. Entering the cultivation state, as soon as the true qi in his body was activated, the elixir field, like the head of a giant beast, shook and rose. A wave of true qi immediately flowed throughout his body, and Sikong Jing opened his eyes and said, "The Ming realm is once again heavy. Close your eyes and fix it again." Half a quarter of an hour later, Sikong Jing opened his eyes again and said, "The Ming realm is double. Close your eyes again." In the next moment, a furious shout suddenly came from outside the thatched cottage. "Su Yueshi, you are so bold that you dare to chop off a pair of hands and feet of my loyal servant. Do you want to die?" Sikong Jing opened his eyes again, stood up with a cold face, and strode out of the thatched cottage. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. A pair created by heaven and earth. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. A pair created by heaven and earth. Outside the thatched cottage, there was a muddy clearing filled with foul-smelling pig manure. At this moment, Su Yueshi was surrounded by several people, led by a beautiful woman dressed in luxurious silk, but her eyebrows and eyes were all harsh, and her face was also full of arrogance. Su Yueshi trembled slightly and said with fear and shame, "Su Yun, it was my aunt who falsely accused me of stealing pigs from the pig farm first, and she even hit and scolded me before I started." Sikong Jing's footsteps paused, and he was stunned. Although she had chopped off a pair of hands and feet of that shrew herself, Su Yueshi said it was her own move. Dui, it was the shrew just now who was still unconscious on the ground. Someone was giving her hemostatic treatment. Wow, it's really you. Su Yun, the harsh woman across from Su Yueshi, twisted her face and exclaimed, "You are so ugly and shameful to the Su family. How dare you be so cruel to my servant? Someone, give me 10 slaps on her face first, and then bring her to the Su family law enforcement hall to be punished." With Su Yun's command, a maid-like woman next to her strode out. Facing Su Yueshi's face, he fiercely pulled it over. Su Yueshi wanted to hide, but it seemed like she suddenly closed her eyes and let it go. Pop. In vain, a crisp voice came from her ear, and Su Yueshi did not feel any pain on her face. At the same time, she heard a scream, which came from Su Yun's maid. Opening his eyes, a tall and straight figure appeared in front of Su Yueshi. Of course it was Sikong Jing. His face suddenly changed. How did his husband come out? He even hit Su Yun's maid. Su Yun across from her was stunned when she saw Sikong Jing suddenly appear, and then saw her own person being beaten. She became furious and coquettishly exclaimed, "Who are you? Someone who dares to hit me." Sikong Jing's gaze was cold as he whispered, "I am Su Yueshi's husband, Sikong Jing." Su Yun was taken aback and looked up and down at Sikong Jing, then asked with a mocking smile, "Are you the husband of the criminal who was personally betrothed to Su Yueshi by the Lord of Yunzhou 5 days ago?" With a raised eyebrow, it was likely that Yan Tianma, the emperor of the Shang Dynasty, personally arranged for her to marry the ugliest woman in Yunzhou, which was also the idea of Princess Yan Ryu. The goal is naturally to humiliate oneself severely. When did you become the little lord of Yunzhou to point to marriage? However, Sikong Jing didn't care about these minor details and spoke coldly, "Yes, I cut off the hands and feet of this shrew. If you have any objections, just come to me." As soon as the words fell, Su Yueshi quickly grabbed Si Kongjing and said, "No, I cut off Aunt Do's hands and feet, not him." Although she was covering her face, she could still feel the anxiety on her face and kept winking at Si Kongjing. But Si Kongjing suddenly understood that Su Yueshi was taking the blame for herself, and her heart warmed again. She shook her head and said, "There's no need for that. What I cut is what I cut. You." Seeing that Si Kongjing was still admitting, Su Yueshi was too anxious to speak. At that moment, Su Yun shouted angrily, "Shut up, are you showing off your love in front of me? A exiled and sick seedling, and an ugly and eccentric couple, they are really a perfect match. No matter who chopped it, since you are husband and wife, you cannot escape the blame. Especially you, a sick seedling, dare to hit my maid. Go ahead, teach him a hard lesson." Several thugs around heard the order, their faces showing a ferocious smile, and without saying a word, they rushed toward Si Kongjing. Su Yun's maid covered her face, which had been slapped by Si Kongjing, and said fiercely, "Kill this dog man and woman for me." After speaking, the maid also took action to kill Su Yueshi. At the moment when everyone was attacking, Si Kongjing widened his eyes and said coldly, "Earth chickens, tiles, and dogs." As the words fell, his huge fist smashed out. Although he was only a small double of the Ming realm now, he was practicing the slaying emperor and breaking prison technique, and he was once an invincible divine general. Its momentum rises from the ground, with a few punches, even without the need for any martial arts skills. Bang 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 bang, the few thugs brought by Su Yun were all punched and screamed in agony as they flew backwards. Immediately after, Si Kongjing dodged and protected Su Yueshi, slapping Su Yun's maid who was rushing towards her. Pop! The maid was hit again, let out a scream, and twisted her whole body in mid-air, landing heavily, covered in pig manure. The scene was frozen in the moment when Si Kongjing stopped. Originally, Si Kongjing, who was supposed to be a sick seedling, stood in front of Su Yueshi, with a sharp posture like an insurmountable barrier. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Yunye City Su Family. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Yunye City Su Family. Su Yun was stunned, trembling her fingers as she pointed at Si Kongjing and screamed, "Damn it, when did you recover your strength as a sick seedling? How dare you hit my person?" With a cold face, Si Kongjing took a step forward and said, "Besides, I dare to hit you." However, just as Si Kongjing was about to draw towards Su Yun, Su Yueshi, who had reacted, shouted, "Wait a moment, don't hit." Feeling his hand being pulled, Si Kongjing frowned with a puzzled expression. At this moment, frightened Su Yun shouted again, okay, what a damn couple of dogs and men. You're doomed. I'll report it to the Su Family Law Enforcement Hall now, and you'll just wait for the heavy punishment." Speaking, Su Yun quickly turned around and ran away. Immediately after, her maids and thugs also put down their harsh words and ran after her. Si Kongjing didn't chase after him either, as his hand was tightly held by Su Yueshi. He asked in confusion, "Su Yueshi, that woman just now clearly intended to target you. She should give you a hard lesson." He originally came from a grassroots background and struggled to survive since childhood. He has always been intolerant of bullying the weak. After joining the army of the Great Shang Dynasty, whenever Si Kongjing saw someone being bullied, he had to take care of them, not to mention the person in front of him or his wife who had been taking good care of him for several days. Su Yueshi shook her head vigorously and said, "You can't teach me a lesson. Su Yun is my second uncle's daughter, and hitting her maids and servants can resolve the situation. But if you hit her, it will make a big fuss." For this explanation, Si Kongjing was even more puzzled. "Since she is your second uncle's daughter, why did she treat you like this? Isn't it necessary to take care of each other between family members? Not to mention such close relatives." Upon hearing this question, Su Yueshi's eyes were gloomy, and she lowered her head and said, "Because I'm too ugly, I've embarrassed the Su family. Because of her ugliness, even her relatives despise her. Suddenly, Jing looked around and his whole body trembled slightly, asking, judging from Su Yun's attire, your Su family should not be considered poor. Why do you live in such a place? The surroundings were full of foul odor, and the thatched cottage was on the verge of collapse, as if it could be blown down by a gust of wind. What is the place where a lady from a wealthy family lives? Originally, Jing thought that Su Yueshi's background was not good, but Su Yun was the daughter of her second uncle, with maids and thugs. She was definitely not from an ordinary family, and even very wealthy. Su Yueshi's eyes became even dimmer as she whispered, our Su family is one of the 4 major families in Yunye City, Yunzhou, and naturally we are not poor. And I only moved here 5 days ago. With a slight tremor throughout his body, Jing asked, 5 days ago, was it because of me? 5 days ago, she was exiled to Yunzhou and designated as Su Yueshi's husband. 5 days ago, Su Yueshi was thrown into this place, and there must be a connection between them. Su Yueshi nodded and immediately shook her head, saying, it's not all because of you. The place I originally lived in wasn't very good either. Because I married you, I once again embarrassed the Su family and was ordered to live here. Jing suddenly realized that he was an exiled criminal. As a Miss Su from the 4 major families in Yunye City, even if she was ugly, marrying a criminal would still bring shame to the entire city. Therefore, this is the punishment given by the Su family to Su Yueshi. But there is no such thing. Marrying oneself is not Su Yueshi's own will, but an order from Emperor Yan Tianma of the Great Shang Dynasty. Ultimately, the reason is still because I look too ugly. Su Yueshi lowered her head, her eyes filled with inferiority. Seeing this situation, Jing couldn't help but ask, where are your parents? No matter how ugly she looks, her daughter will still be her daughter, and it is impossible for her to be subjected to such abuse. Su Yueshi was about to answer, but at that moment she was interrupted by a scream, which was the shrew lying on the ground. Miss Su Yun, the old slave has been deposed. Please help me kill the dog couple Su Yueshi. At this moment, the shrew suddenly came to her senses, unaware that Su Yun had already left. She continued to shout, especially that sick seedling, he chopped off my hands and feet, and I want to sit on him in one fell swoop. With these words, Su Yueshi's face suddenly changed and her eyes kept flickering. Suddenly, a resolute glare flashed through her eyes, and she rushed towards the shrew's side. She took out a dagger from her arms and plunged it towards the fallen shrew. But she seemed to have never killed anyone, her hands trembling wildly. Ugly, what are you doing? The shrew exclaimed in panic as she saw the situation, struggling frantically, how dare you kill me? Damn it, Miss Su Yun won't let you go. She will definitely kill you and your stinky man. Upon hearing these words, Su Yueshi instinctively looked at Jing, her gaze even more resolute. The trembling hands no longer trembled, and the dagger in their hand plunged fiercely into the heart of the shrew. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Su Family Law Enforcement Hall. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Su Family Law Enforcement Hall. Puff. Fresh blood splattered out on Su Yueshi's face. With a thud, Su Yueshi released her dagger and sat down on the ground, her face turning pale under her veil. The shrew, on the other hand, widened her eyes and had already died. Jing slowly walked forward, unmoved by such a small scene, but he had seen countless new recruits killing for the first time, which required courage. So, Jing asked with concern, Su Yueshi, are you okay? Shaking violently throughout her body, Su Yueshi stood up and swallowed the mouthpiece of the waterway toward Jing, saying, I'm fine. Now that Aunt Do has died, there is no evidence to prove it. When you go to the Su Family Law Enforcement Hall later, you must not admit that Aunt Do was the one you hacked, let alone admit that you killed her. I did everything, understand? Su Yueshi's expression was solemn, and her gaze was fixed on Su Zhenglong. And Su Zhenglong widened his eyes and asked, "Did you kill this shrew to silence her for me?" He originally thought that Su Yueshi's murder was just because he hated the bullying of the shrew before, but he didn't expect it to be because of himself, because he was afraid of being criticized by the Su family's law enforcement court. Su Yueshi nodded and admitted. Why? Su Zhenglong has seen too many first-time murders, which not only requires courage, but also great determination. And Su Yueshi actually took action because of herself. Su Yueshi lifted her eyelids and said seriously, "Because yours is my husband, and because I am the daughter of the Su family. Even if I make a big mistake, they won't take my life, but you're different. You're an exiled criminal, and everyone in the Su family wants you to die right away." Upon hearing this, Su Zhenglong asked again, "Even if I won't take your life, I will still be severely punished. The Su family can mercilessly let her live in such a foul-smelling place, and let her be beaten and scolded by domestic slaves. How could it be better to kill Su Yueshi?" Under the veil, Su Yueshi smiled innocently and said, "That's better than you dying." After speaking, Su Yueshi suddenly thought of something and pulled up Su Zhenglong, saying, "You come with me first." Regardless of whether Su Zhenglong agreed or not, he pulled him and ran towards the back of the thatched cottage. Behind is the Su family's pig farm, and then behind is a small mountain forest. Running around the pig farm, Su Yueshi pulled Su Zhenglong to a hidden cave in the mountains and forests before gasping for breath, "You hide here first, don't come out, you know. Wait for me to come back." Su Zhenglong was stunned again and asked, "Why?" "I'm afraid the people from the law enforcement hall will take this opportunity to hit you first." "Anyway, don't come out," Su Yueshi said as she heard angry voices coming from the direction of the thatched cottage in the distance. It was Su Yun who came with the people from the law enforcement hall. "I have to go immediately, otherwise they will definitely come over. Remember to hide well." After speaking, Su Yueshi ran back and disappeared into the site of Su Zhenglong cave. Until Su Yueshi could not be seen, Su Zhenglong slowly withdrew his gaze. He was a 7-foot-tall man, once an invincible general, and at this moment, his eyes turned red and his lips trembled. If Princess Yen Ryu is a ruthless extreme, then Su Yueshi is the warmest sunshine in the world. For 19 years, I feel like I'm really still alive. Su Zhenglong took a deep breath and looked in the direction of the thatched cottage, saying, "But how can I let my wife suffer for me?" This sentence is resolute. After speaking, he followed Su Yueshi's direction step by step, and the true energy of the emperor slaying and prison-breaking technique in his body continued to circulate. The Su family law enforcement hall was heavily guarded. As the 4 major families of Yunye, there are thousands of members from all over the Su family. The law enforcement hall is the place where the Su family interrogates and punishes its members, and everyone in the Su family is afraid. At this moment, at the top of the law enforcement hall sat a middle-aged man, who was Su Zhenglong, the second uncle of Su Yueshi. His current position at the Su family is law enforcement hall leader. Next to Su Zhenglong stood his favorite daughter, Su Yun. When the law enforcement officers brought Su Yueshi in, Su Yun shouted directly, "Su Yueshi, where is your husband, a criminal who speaks wildly?" Su Yueshi whispered back, "He happened to be sick again. I'll take him for treatment." "Medical treatment? What are you taking to send him for treatment?" "I think he escaped, right?" Su Yun couldn't believe it. When Su Yueshi was thrown into a pig farm 5 days ago, all her money was confiscated, and her parents were also ordered by her grandfather, who was the head of the Su family, not to interfere with her anymore. Su Yueshi has no money or anyone, so she can send that sick seedling for treatment. Regarding this, Su Yueshi stubbornly replied, "It's just being sent for treatment." Okay, you dare to talk back to me, right? Whether I send him for treatment or escape, he's definitely dead. Those who dare to hit me won't have a good ending. Dad, send someone to catch him now. Su Yun finished speaking and looked at her father, Su Zhenglong. Without hesitation, Su Zhenglong shouted, "Someone, catch that criminal back for me. If you dare to resist, just chop him down for me." Su Yueshi's heart trembled and she prayed that if Sikong Jing was found, she would not resist. At this moment, Su Zhenglong's gaze returned to the center of the law enforcement hall and shouted, "Su Yueshi, kneel down." With a thud, Su Yueshi knelt down. "You cut off Aunt Do's hands and feet, and now you're still killing her, right?" Su Zhenglong interrogated with a cold face. Su Yueshi nodded and said, "Yes, I did it all." She made up her mind to take full responsibility for this matter. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Beasts Leaving the Gate. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Beasts Leaving the Gate. Su Zhenglong's face was serious and stern, and he shouted, "Do you know the laws of the Su family? Killing innocent servants without reason, even the master of the family will be punished with a cane." Of course, Su Yueshi knew this, at least it was 100 cane punishment. This is a provision in the Su family's family law, aimed at making the servants loyal, but generally, if the owner really kills the servants, they will use various reasons to justify it or resort to false beating during the execution. But Su Yueshi was well aware that she, the ugly daughter of her own family, could not have received such treatment. Being punished with a cane is definitely being severely beaten. Biting her lips tightly, Su Yueshi still struggled to argue, "Second uncle, it's not for no reason. It's because my aunt teased me first. She even falsely accused me of stealing pigs from the pig farm and even harmed my husband." Upon hearing this, Su Zhenglong lightly glanced at his daughter Su Yun. "Fart." Su Yun stepped out and coquettishly exclaimed, "The pig farm is missing one pig. My father has found out that you stole it. My aunt only scolded you a few times, but you didn't cut her hands and feet enough. You even killed her. Speaking of which," Su Yun lightly flicked the corner of her mouth, "and what if she falsely accused you?" Su Zhenglong's eyes also flashed with a strange expression, and he immediately said with a serious face, "Su Yueshi stole a pig. The evidence is solid, and after being exposed, he killed Do-e. The evidence is solid, and he should be punished with 100 sticks." Her whole body trembled violently, and Su Yueshi's tears filled her eyes as she said, "No, you don't have any evidence." Su Zhenglong ignored and shouted, "Su Yueshi's criminal husband is a conspirator, but he doesn't have the surname Su. He should be punished with 200 sticks and executed immediately." "What? Even my own husband is going to be beaten by 200 sticks, how can he still be alive? This matter has nothing to do with my husband, it was all done by me." Su Yueshi stood up vigorously and charged towards Su Zhenglong excitedly, crying and saying, "Uncle Heir, I beg you. I stole the pig, and I also killed the person. Just punish me alone." In order to protect Sikong Jing, Su Yueshi even admitted to stealing pigs. At the corners of their mouths, Su Zhenglong and Su Yun sneered, saying that there was indeed no evidence of stealing a pig, and even teasing aunt to beat her could lead to an investigation. However, Su Yueshi admitted personally that no matter how much punishment was given, there could be no fault. "Yueshi, how do you ask Uncle Heir to say, hello, dot? Isn't it just a pig? Just tell Uncle Heir and you'll have it. How can you steal? Uncle Heir is very cold-hearted, but as the head of the law enforcement hall, he can only deal with it according to family law. If someone comes, they will be punished with 100 sticks." 2 members of the law enforcement hall stepped out upon hearing the order, holding heavy killing canes in their hands. Su Yunhan smiled heartily and said, "Give me a heavy blow." Boom. Just as 2 members of the law enforcement hall raised their killing power sticks high, a wild aura suddenly rolled up from the entrance of the law enforcement hall, accompanied by a furious shout. "I see who dares to fight." As the words fell, a straight figure landed and strode forward. Su Yueshi's face changed in shock, she turned back. When he saw that it was actually Su Zhenglong, he couldn't help but shout, "Didn't I refuse to let you come? Let's go." At the same time, Su Zhenglong looked up coldly and shouted angrily, "Who are you?" "Dad, he is Su Yueshi's criminal and sick husband. He hit my servants and maids, and I almost got beaten by him." Su Yun pointed at Su Zhenglong and shouted, "Someone, take him down and put him to death." Upon hearing the order, the members of the law enforcement hall held their killing power sticks and surrounded Su Zhenglong. Su Yueshi saw the situation and anxiously said, "Stop it, you have no reason to take him." She was really anxious. It was obvious that Uncle Air and Su Yun were deliberately targeting her. Why did he still come? After being punished with 100 sticks, the situation will be settled. Don't pay attention to this ugly person. The sickly criminal dared to resist and killed me directly. Su Yun's face twisted. More than 10 members of the law enforcement hall laughed strangely, their true chi rising from their bodies, each one reaching the realm of the 5 realms of the Ming realm. They held the killing power wand and without saying a word, rushed towards Su Zhenglong. "No, no." Su Yueshi screamed and looked at Su Zhenglong again, "Second uncle, please let them stop." However, Su Zhenglong showed a smile of old age presence and even drank some fragrant tea. "This criminal, if we kill him, we'll kill him. 5 days ago, when the head of the Su family, Su Yueshi and Su Yun's grandfather, learned of the news of the marriage bestowed by the Lord of Yunzhou, they almost came to kill this criminal in anger. But after all, this is the marriage bestowed by the Lord of Yunzhou, and there is no reason why it cannot be killed, even if he is just an exiled criminal. Now, there's a reason." Seeing that Uncle Air ignored her, Su Yueshi could only hurriedly look at the besieged Su Zhenglong, wanting to rush up and protect her. But since she suddenly became ugly at the age of 8, her martial arts skills have not been able to advance inch by inch. Even the true chi inside the body has disappeared without a trace, how can one approach it? "Are you about to be beaten to death after taking care of your husband for 5 days? Yunzhou is indeed a border area, and the Ming dynasty's 5 realms are much weaker than their peers in other places, all of which are useless." Suddenly, the voice of Su Zhenglong came to my ears, and then... boom! A violent aura emerged from the center of more than a dozen law enforcement officers. Bang bang with 2 loud explosions, Su Zhenglong emerged from the crowd and at some point, he had already taken a sword of killing power from his hand. He fell beside Su Yueshi and looked at more than a dozen people from the law enforcement hall. "Kill!" A low sound shook out from Su Zhenglong's mouth, and when he had just arrived, his true energy had only reached the triple level of the Ming realm, causing a riot. He grabbed his killing power stick and rushed into the crowd, like a fierce beast exiting the gate, unstoppable. Across from Su Zhenglong, although there were all 5 layers of Ming realm, no one could hold on to his staff. A series of screams rang out, and the sound of bangs echoed in the law enforcement hall. When Su Zhenglong landed, more than 10 members of the law enforcement hall had all fallen to the ground and vomited blood, and no one survived. Anxious Su Yueshi widened her eyes and covered her mouth in disbelief. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Father.in.law Su Zhenglong. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Father.in.law Su Zhenglong. It is understandable that Su Zhenglong had beaten Su Yun's maids and servants before. Their martial arts were all weak, but the people in the law enforcement hall were the elite of the Su family. Surprisingly, he also won. When did his illness recover? Su Zhenglong, who was surrounded by the old god, stood up at some point and stared intently at Su Zhenglong in the hall. Everything came too quickly, and when he realized it, the battle had already ended. What puzzled him even more was that the aura on Su Zhenglong's body was only 3 layers of Mingjing. The level of realm is difficult to surpass, and it is even more difficult to fight beyond it. Moreover, Su Zhenglong is facing more than a dozen elite members of the Su family who are twice as tall as him. But he just won. At this moment, Jing is standing in the hall holding a killing power stick, arrogant. Then, Jing slowly closed his eyes and grasped the true qi inside his body. I couldn't help but sigh in my heart, the technique of slaying the emperor and breaking the prison is really powerful. In the past, he could also win with the triple realm of Ming, but he would never be so easily crushed as now. The blood in his body seemed to be driven by the true qi of the slaying emperor and breaking prison technique, still boiling wildly. What a brave little criminal, how dare you make a big fuss at the Su family law enforcement hall. Suddenly, the incredulous Su Yun came to her senses and screamed, "Dad, kill him." Su Jingtao's eyes flickered with a cold light, indicating that this criminal was by no means an ordinary person until he was released from prison. However, since he is now exiled and deliberately married to the ugly 8 monsters by the Lord of Yunzhou, he has no background at all. Thinking of this, true qi emerged from Su Jingtao and instantly reached the dark realm. Su Yueshi's husband openly caused a commotion in the Su family's law enforcement hall and was executed. As the words fell, Su Jingtao stepped down step by step from the interrogation platform of the law enforcement hall, and the true energy of the dark realm approached Jing. At the same time, Jing also opened his eyes and looked at him. Even if the legend of slaying the emperor and breaking the prison is strong, it is impossible for the 3 realms of Ming to break through a great realm. However, don't forget that Jing is an invincible divine general, and his murderous aura on the battlefield still exists. He has 100% confidence in killing Su Jingtao, but of course, he will also pay a heavy price. But Jing had never seen such a scene before, and there were countless battles of life and death in the battlefield, so he was not afraid of weakness. He held his killing power stick and walked step by step against Su Jingtao, with a strong killing intent. Boom! The next second, he rushed to the 4th level of the Ming realm. Unfortunately, time is too short. If given some more time, killing Su Jingtao would be like digging out a bag. What should we do? It's impossible to win, we'll die. Su Yueshi was very clear about her second uncle's strength and was extremely anxious, but she couldn't even get in touch and couldn't even move. Uncle Su Jingtao's true energy constantly pushed her back. At a critical moment, a hoarse voice suddenly sounded outside the door. "Second brother, are you sorry to bully a younger generation?" With this sound, Su Yueshi's whole body was stimulated and she looked fiercely at the entrance of the law enforcement hall. I saw a middle-aged man with a pale face outside the door, leaning on a cane and trembling as he walked in. Su Yueshi exclaimed in ecstasy, "Daddy." Speaking, he quickly rushed out and helped the middle-aged man, who was Su Zhenglong, Su Yueshi's father. At the same time, Su Jingtao's true qi solidified all over his body, forcing his footsteps toward Jing to stop and squinting at Su Zhenglong. After a while, Su Jingtao finally spoke up and asked, "Big brother, why did you come? Shouldn't my big brother still be lying in bed?" The people of the Su family all know that Su Yueshi's father, Su Zhenglong, has been seriously injured since the war 10 years ago, often unconscious, and unable to manage the affairs of the family. Otherwise, even the servants wouldn't dare to humiliate his daughter Su Yueshi. But how did he come at this critical moment? Su Zhenglong at the door was held by Su Yueshi, still gasping for breath, but a hint of shame appeared on his face. "Upon hearing that my honest second daughter had killed a servant, I was pleasantly surprised and came over to take a look. I didn't expect to see you bullying the younger brother, which surprised me even more." Su Zhenglong's words were full of mockery. Suddenly, Su Jingtao's face darkened and he said coldly, "Big brother, I'm joking. As the head of the Su family's law enforcement hall, I'm arresting the criminal who openly caused trouble in the law enforcement hall, which is your cheap criminal son. Law." The 2 brothers didn't say a word, but they were already on par. Su Zhenglong shrugged and said, "That's still bullying the younger generation. And it seems like you're still bullying my daughter." The last sentence made his pale face turn cold, and a cold light splattered in his eyes. My daughter Su Zhenglong, even if she takes a pig from home, what if she kills a wicked servant who dares to insult her? Of course, you are the head of the law enforcement hall, following family rules. But if you want to interrogate my daughter, have you asked me if I have been informed? Second brother, I haven't died yet. The voice shook fiercely, and Su Zhenglong's body suddenly straightened up in vain. True energy also surged out of his body, and in the blink of an eye, he reached the dark realm, but not only that, he continued to charge into the human realm. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. The Former Heavenly Pride. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. The former heavenly pride Su Zhenglong's face was still very pale, but his true energy forced Su Zhengtao to step back. Now, do you still need to interrogate my daughter? Su Zhenglong asked in a cold voice. With his fist clenched tightly, Su Zhengtao knew that Su Yueshi had not stolen the pigs from the pig farm, and he also knew that teasing his aunt and humiliating her first. Now that Su Zhenglong is present, if he continues to falsely accuse and surrender, even if his condition is extremely poor, he will risk his life to kill himself. He is in a dark realm and still cannot defeat Su Zhenglong's human realm. Thinking of this, Su Zhengtao breathed a sigh of relief and forced a smile, saying, "Big brother, you're joking. Since you're all saying that, I definitely won't dare to try again. I can't anger big brother to death." The words were full of teasing, as if saying that you're almost dead, big brother. What if you're just as imposing? Humph. Su Zhenglong snorted coldly and slowly withdrew his true energy from his body. In the next moment, he coughed loudly again. After a while, Su Zhenglong asked hoarsely, "Can I take my daughter and son-in-law with me now? Of course, I don't know where big brother is taking you." Su Zhengtao sneered and reminded, "She lives in a pig farm, but it's my father's order. Don't get angry with him." In words, there is still a threat. Su Zhenglong glanced at him and said, "Of course you're going home with me. I'll explain it to my father and don't worry about my younger brother." After speaking, he looked at Su Yueshi and Sikong Jing and said, "Let's go." Sikong Jing lightly glanced at Su Zhengtao and Su Yun, casually threw down the killing wand, and quickly walked to Su Zhenglong's father and daughter's side, saying to Su Yueshi, "I'll come." Speaking, Sikong Jing helped Su Zhenglong, and the person in front of him was his father-in-law, a father who loved his daughter very much. "It's just the injury on his body, it looks very serious." Watching the three of them leave, Su Zhengtao's fist clenched and his face looked eerie and terrifying. "Su Zhenglong, why haven't you died yet?" His voice squeezed out from between his teeth, filled with hatred. Su Zhenglong, once the pride of the entire Su family, was hailed as the strongest pride of Yunye City. Since childhood, Su Zhengtao has been suppressed by his big brother, like a transparent person without anyone's attention. It was not until Su Zhenglong faced off with someone 10 years ago and suffered a heavy blow that Su Zhengtao was able to stand out. That same time, Su Zhenglong became drooping and dying. It has been 10 years and he hasn't died yet, and even though he is injured like this now, he is still suppressing himself in the martial arts world. As long as he works hard, no one in the Su family except for the head father is his opponent. Even father cannot be said to win steadily. This time, Su Yueshi was falsely accused, and Su Zhengtao wanted to make this big brother angry and die. Counting thousands of calculations, it's hard to believe that he heard the news and came to save the scene. "Dad, is that how you let go of Su Yueshi, this ugly monster?" Su Yun also asked with resentment. Su Zhengtao gasped heavily, his gaze fixed, and he said coldly, "Didn't Su Zhenglong say I bullied the younger generation? Go and call your second brother over, challenge the criminal directly, and kill him alive." Su Yun frowned at the words and said, "Yes, my second brother is still at home. I'll go find him to vent my anger on me." Outside the Su family law enforcement hall, Su Yueshi and Sikong Jing helped Su Zhenglong leave. Dad, when did you wake up? How did you come? Don't you know, Mom? Su Yueshi asked 3 questions in a row. The anxious mood calmed down, and with my dad around, there was no need to worry about anything. Su Zhenglong's pale face showed a hint of indulgence, and he replied, "Of course your mother doesn't know, otherwise I wouldn't be able to come." Upon hearing this, Su Yueshi's face stiffened and she let out a gloomy sigh. Next to him, Jing had some doubts. Su Yueshi's mother, if her mother.in.law knew, wouldn't let her father.in.law come to save their daughter. What is the reason for this? Su Yueshi's mother, shouldn't she be more urgent? But Su Yueshi, along with herself, lived in a pig farm for 5 consecutive days, and this mother.in.law seemed to be indifferent. Regarding this, Jing, who had just become a son.in.law, naturally found it difficult to ask questions in person. In the conversation between Su Yueshi and his daughter, Jing learned that his father.in.law Su Zhenglong was bedridden for years and often in a coma, which lasted for several days. Even Su Yueshi was granted marriage to herself, only to find out after waking up today. This father.in.law heard that Su Yueshi was living in a pig farm and secretly dragged her sick body out to see her daughter. During this time, he heard that Su Yueshi was falsely accused and taken to the law enforcement hall, so he came over to save someone. Regarding this, Jing looked at Su Zhenglong with a hint of respect in his eyes. Halfway through the conversation, Su Zhenglong suddenly looked at Jing in a muffled voice and asked with a smile, "I never expected that when I woke up, my precious daughter would get married. What's your name?" "Father-in-law, my name is Jing," replied Jing with a straight face. Jing, a good name. Su Zhenglong praised and asked with a deep gaze, "You only have 4 levels of bright realm. If you dare to fight against Su Jingtao's dark realm, are you not afraid of death?" Speaking of which, Su Zhenglong stared deeply at Jing. End of this chapter.